Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Socially Distanced Sports Talk. I'm Charlie Goodwin. We have a very special guest today. He has worked for numerous prestigious publications, including Detroit Free Press, Chicago Tribune, and the Washington Post. He is currently a senior writer for Sports Illustrated, as well as a University of Michigan graduate. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Rosenberg. Michael, how are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
No problem. We're very excited to have you today. Let's get into it with something pretty current, which is the lack of sports right now with the coronavirus pandemic, whereas other people we've had on this show, such as PA announcers or play-by-play guys, they rely on sports actually being played to do their jobs. However, you've had things to report on for Sports Illustrated, just to write articles on. So have you had to change the way about anything that you do in the past months, or is it just business as usual for you?
Well, I haven't gotten on a plane, so that's a big difference. That's probably the longest stretch I've had in 20 years of not getting on a plane, at least. It's interesting. My job is kind of a combination of columns, features, and the columns are sometimes off of games. And so with the games gone, that sort of component of my job has just vanished. It's interesting because it's actually been quite a newsy few months, even though nobody is really doing
Right.
anything. I mean, a lot of things have been canceled. We've obviously had people making, getting positive tests for the virus. We got a team in the NFL changing its name. We've had social justice protests. We've had athletes doing a lot of things. So there's actually been quite a bit of stuff to cover. But sort of that foundation of what we do is that the people are competing in sporting events. So we do all want to get that back. I think it'd be good for everybody and good for the country.
Right. The absence of sports is definitely felt right now, but I mean, fortunately for you, you've definitely still been able to have stuff to report on, whether it's the NFL draft or, like you said, the Washington football team name change. I actually heard that's coming soon. Don't know how much you could say about that, but going off a similar topic, you've done a lot of work in the newspapers. You're a guy who's been in this business for a long time. Obviously, a lot of the work of this industry has now transferred to online, regardless of what's going on in the world. So how has your job changed over the years and what you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, Sports Illustrated was, something I looked forward to getting in my mailbox every Thursday as a kid, and now it's monthly. But I actually write a lot more than people in my position probably did 20 or 30 years ago, because we do have this constantly updating medium now with the internet. So there are a lot of advantages. I mean, there's an immediacy to it. I like writing, so when I have something to say, when I have something to report, I don't have to wait a week to get that in. It comes immediately. The challenges really have not been so much journalistically; they've just been financially. I mean, the business model that we had before doesn't really work now, and people are figuring out different ways to make it work. So that's been the challenge. But journalistically, I mean, having the internet's been great.
So you've been at Sports Illustrated for, if I'm not mistaken, 8 years now.
That's right.
So when you started, was the online presence as big as it is now, or did you find that you did more in-person work back then?
The online, the website was a big part of why I was hired. It was to be sort of the lead columnist for the site. The difference was the magazine was coming out more frequently. It was a little thicker. So what fills the magazine is different from what fills the website. I mean, if you think about it, when you get a magazine at home, there's a finite number of stories in there. And we can trust that once you open it, you're going to give most of those stories a chance. When you're going on to somebody's website, whether it's on your phone or your laptop or whatever you do, there's just so much out there that it's a little bit harder to get traction, and you have to be a little bit more concerned with relevancy and timeliness. So what we cover, I guess, has changed, and it changes slowly enough that you have to look back 8 years and really see it. But it's been a long time since the website has been a big part of what Sports Illustrated does.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have really thought about it that way that you just explained, in which that you know that they're going to give most of the stories a chance in person, but you can't guarantee that online. That has actually never occurred to me. So that's really interesting what you just said. Building on that, you've put together a really great career for yourself, between the newspapers and Sports Illustrated and even the Michigan Daily. Is there a particular story that you've worked on that sticks out to you throughout your career?
Hmm. You know, I guess I just try to do the best I can with all of them. Sometimes a column you can kind of just rip it off in an hour, and sometimes there's a feature that can take literally years to get someone to trust you and then tell their story. So
Right.
um, I don't know if I have one favorite. There are some stories that stick with me a lot longer than others. There was a story in the 1989 Final Four. Ramon Ramos, obviously Michigan fans will know because Michigan won that year, but
Right.
Ramon Ramos, a star for Seton Hall that year, got in a car accident a few months later, and he's not been able to form memories since. So kind of through that device, I tried to explain all the career decisions and sort of just life happening to all these other figures in the Final Four. Um, Tiger Woods' Masters last year was probably right near the top as far as live events. I've done 6 Olympic Games. So the fun part of journalism and one of the reasons I got into it is because every day is different. You know, something
Right.
happens all
Yeah.
the time. And so I guess for me, not so much one incident or one story, but the breadth of what I've been able to write about, what I've been able to cover, what I've been able to see, the people I've been able to meet is what has made my career so rewarding more than any one story.
Right. And that's great. I actually didn't know that you wrote the Ramon Ramos story. I remember reading that when it came out. So that's funny, small world. In preparing for this interview, I read a story about your time in the Michigan Daily, where you wrote an article on the Michigan receiver Walter Smith, and the contents of that article were very personal to him. And you said that it's not just about getting your facts right; it's about taking the proper care. So, is there any other ways that your time at the Michigan Daily shaped you into what you do now?
It's interesting with that Walter Smith story. That was probably the first real feature story that I felt like was up to sort of the standard that I hope to hit. I would hope I'm doing better now than I did back then, but I actually received an email from Walter Smith at some point in the last 10 years or so. So he remembered the story, which for me was kind of cool because I was, a junior in college at the
Right.
time. As far as the Michigan Daily's impact on my career, I met my wife there. So I think you can pretty much say my entire life hinges on the fact that I joined the Michigan Daily.
um, that's definitely a very good way to look at it. Speaking of the Michigan Daily, I wouldn't be doing this interview its proper justice without asking you a few staple Ann Arbor questions. So, if you have one meal in Ann Arbor, where are you eating?
Ooh,
It could be a tough one, I know.
that's an interesting one. I really like Pacific Rim. I love going there. Zingerman's is obviously high on the list.
Right.
Anthony's Pizza, for people who haven't tried it, should try it. Um, don't limit me to one meal. I guess that's my biggest request. But those are the first ones that come to mind.
Yeah, as someone who lived on South U this past year, I may favor Maize and Blue a little bit more over Zingerman's just because of the proximity, but they're both great.
Yeah.
Obviously.
If I don't say Mr. Spots, then I feel like I lose my diploma. So we
Oh
got to
no,
put that
yeah,
up there
Mr.
too.
Spot's great too. Really, I mean, really, you can't go wrong in Ann Arbor. I know you and I are saying that as biased people, but all the food's great there. Was there like a specific game that you were at in your years at Michigan that sticks out to you the most? I know already in my 2 years, there's a couple that I can name for myself, but
Yeah, I remember leaving the old press box at Michigan Stadium because Michigan was about to beat Colorado in 1994. And I went down the elevator and I walked out into the stands and the ball had already been snapped. And the next thing I knew, Cordell Stewart was throwing this bomb to Michael Westbrook, this Hail Mary to beat Michigan. So, and I remember walking down through the stands to get down to the field to go do my job. And it was the easiest walk through the stands I probably ever had after a game because people it was truly the definition of stunned silence. They were just sitting there, couldn't believe what they saw. So that's the one that sticks out with me from college.
And it's funny that a loss is the one that sticks out to you. I mean, I would have thought you went more along the lines of a win, but I mean, that's
Yeah,
definitely
I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I just think about good games more than who won or lost. That, I recollect
no,
the
yeah,
hockey team
definitely.
my sophomore year, and the hockey team that year was far and away the best in the country. They beat Lake Superior State every time they played them, except in the NCAA tournament, and they lost in overtime. So certain games just stick out with you one way or the other. But kind of the fun thing with Michigan, there's so many sports and so many great games that you're going to get some
Right,
good
yeah.
ones.
Would you say you spent more of your time at Michigan as a spectator or working for the Daily?
I spent probably more time working for the Daily than everything else combined. I knew what I wanted to do, and I loved it, and it didn't feel like work. So that would be my answer.
I mean, yeah, that's great. I mean, I would say I spend a lot of time as working for the sports radio, but I would say I definitely spend more time as a fan just because I'm not so sure I'm at the point where I want to do sports journalism yet, but it's definitely something that I enjoy doing, and it's so great that you knew from such an early age what you wanted to do. I mean, most people don't. Um, and one step further, that you actually get to do it because most people don't do that as well. So, would there be a favorite memory from your college experience overall that sticks out? I know I'm asking a lot of tough questions. It's hard to pick just one, but just if you could pick anything that maybe defined your college experience,
A sports memory or just a
just
sort
a
of a,
memory in general. Yeah.
as I mentioned, I met my wife there. So many of my close friends, even now, are people that I met through Michigan. I think there's a feeling you get when you're on campus there. And unfortunately, I don't know if people will be on campus again soon like they have been, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's just that feeling of every day being like, this is where I want to be. This is great. This is diverse. There, you're going to find your path if you just are patient and take a little time. I kind of love that it was a big sports school, but that there was a significant percentage of the student population that really wasn't that into sports. I didn't think it
Right.
was like one of these schools where that's literally everything anyone cares about. I just felt like I really fit in, and so I remember when I was a freshman, my friend Ken Davidoff, who writes for the New York Post now, who was a senior at the time, just I remember him driving me somewhere. And he looked around and he said, "I'm really going to miss this place." And I just made a decision at that point. I said, "You know what? I'm not going to look back and say I didn't appreciate it at the time." And when I graduated, I knew that I had really made the most of those 4 years and enjoyed them. And I'm really glad I went to Michigan.
Yeah. I mean, I hope and I think I'll be able to say that in the 2 years' time. Hopefully, graduation won't be online, but that's a whole different story. Last question, parting wisdom. What would be your one piece of advice to anyone who wants to get into sports journalism or sports in general?
It's difficult. Those first few years are important, in that you just have to really be willing to do whatever it's going to take, obviously ethically, to get where you want to go. And Michael Chabon, one of my favorite authors, gave what I thought is the best writing advice I've seen, and it really applies to almost anything, which is there are three factors that are going to determine your success. One is talent, one is luck, and one is discipline. And of those three, the only one you can control is discipline. So you just have to focus on that and hope that the other two work out for you. And I think that that's probably the best advice. I'm stealing it, but that's the best advice that I could give, because you just have to work hard, do things the right way, and hope and trust that your talent and a little bit of luck will get you where you want to go.
That's definitely great advice. Something similar that my parents tell me a lot is only worry about what you can control, which is sort of similar to what you just said, except I think you said it better. And hopefully they don't kill me when they watch this. But thank you for your time today. This was a really great interview. Love talking to you, hearing about your time at Michigan. Is there any last thing you want to say to the audience?
No, just thanks for watching, and best of luck to you. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. We loved having you. With that, for Michael Rosenberg, I'm Charlie Goodwin. Good night and go blue.